Hey guys, this is Josh here with Trillium Wild Edibles, and today I want to bring you an identification video on the wild plantain. Now within the United States, there are two different types of plantain that you're probably going to be running across more often than not. Now the plant that we're looking at here is broadleaf plantain, or Plantago major. Now each plantain is very easy to identify, and there aren't any lookalikes to my knowledge within the United States. This is called broadleaf plantain because, as you can see, it has these very broad oval or egg-shaped leaves. You can see they're shaped just like an egg, and the veins in these leaves, as you can see, start at one point at the petiole of the leaf stem, and then they rise outward. They radiate a little bit outward. And then they all come together towards the tip of the plant. Now the sides or the margins of the leaves of plantain are going to be smooth. You're not going to see any teeth or serrations along the edges or the margins of these leaves. However, you may notice, like you can see here in this one, the sides or margins of the leaves can be a little wavy in look or appearance. Now earlier in the year, this plant has a flower spike, a very distinct flower spike that's coming up out of the center of the rosette. However, it doesn't have its flower spike now, but I will put a picture down below in the right hand corner so you guys can see what that looks like. Now the broadleaf plantain usually grows in a basal rosette pattern. As you can see here, these leaves are growing in a circle around the main taproot of the plant, and that's what makes this a basal rosette. One of the good things about plantain, as you can see here, is it's constantly spitting up new, tender young leaves, just like you can see this little bitty guy here. And the good thing about that is this plant is not only edible, but it's also medicinal. And the edible parts of the plant are these young, tender leaves before they get too stringy. Whereas here on this big leaf, you can see these huge veins that run through this leaf, and these veins are responsible for the strings, which you can see those strings on the back side of the plant here. Now broadleaf plantain and narrowleaf plantain are both in the exact same family that commercial psyllium is gathered from, and here you can see the seed spike that's left from Plantago major. And these seeds can be undoubtedly used the same way as psyllium husks or psyllium fiber. And that's one of the many uses of this plant for food, besides using the young tender leaves for a salad, is that you can use these seeds as a psyllium substitute. And now when it comes to medicine, this plant is very well known within the herbal community because of how effective it is, as well as how mild and gentle and safe this plant is whenever you use it for medicine. This plant can be used for medicine internally and externally. So that's a really, really good thing about this plant. As far as using it, it's useful for an astringent. It's very, very good for drawing out infections or boils or zits. You can use this to make a rheumatism wash or a poultice. This will help to cool the pain of rheumatism. This will help to relieve inflammation of burns, insect stings, and things of that sort because it is very cooling. It's astringent in nature, which means that it contracts the skin or it has contracting agents within it. So if you need to check diarrhea, this plant can help do that. Also, its leaves and root is very high in mucilage, so this plant is also very soothing to inflame mucous membranes of the mouth and throat. And that's another thing this plant can be used for, is for colds and flus to help you ease the discomfort or hoarseness of your sore throat. And when it comes to using the plant for medicine, the entire plant can be used. You can use the leaves, you can use the stem, you can use the flowers, you can use the seeds, you can use the root, you can use all of this plant for medicine. However, my favorite thing to do is just pluck off any good looking leaves like you can see here, because this plant will continue to put out new leaves all throughout the entire growing season. So the good thing about that is if you just keep plucking the leaves, you're going to have a constant supply of plantain growing in your yard. Whereas if you take the root, you are going to kill that plant. Not to worry though, because this is a noxious weed, and as a matter of fact, the natives of North America called this plant white man's foot, because it went everywhere we went. So this plant is extremely noxious, and you're not going to kill it in any way. Now the second major type of plantain that you're going to be running across is called longleaf or narrowleaf plantain, or Plantago lanceolata. Now as you can see here, it looks somewhat similar to the broadleaf plantain or Plantago major in the fact that it does grow in a basal rosette around the taproot of the plant. The veins of the leaf, which are responsible for strings, all start at the petiole and run somewhat parallel to each other all the way to the very tip of the leaf. Longleaf plantain has very long, linear shaped leaves, as you can see here, and the sides or the margin of the leaf is going to be smooth. You're not going to notice any teeth or serrations on these leaves either. However, as you may notice here, you may see on the surface of the leaves all of these little bitty hairs or little fuzz. And you may notice how the underside of the leaves on narrowleaf plantain are smooth. They don't have any of those hairs. However, those discerning ribs or veins are still there, and these are responsible for the strings in this plant as well. Just like its larger-leaved brother, this plant will spit up new leaves all throughout the growing season, so that makes it a really, really good plant to use for medicine. You can use all of this plant, including the root. However, I like to harvest it the same way. I like to just use the very tips of these young leaves and any good-looking leaves like you can see here. The reason I like to do that is because, again, this plant will continue to spit up leaves all throughout the growing season, so I have a continuing supply of these plants. Another unique feature about plantain is on the petiole towards the base of the root, you're going to notice usually a red tinge or a purple tinge like you can see here. And it's going to fade as it goes up and turns into the leaf itself. On some leaves, this tinge may be very dark like you can see here, or it may be very light like you can see here. On some leaves, it can be absent altogether like you see in this one here. Now this plant shares a lot of similar uses with its larger leaf brother. However, a lot of people end up using this plant more often than broadleaf plantain, and some field guides and some sources will say this plant is just a little bit more effective. In my experience, though, I don't notice much of a difference in the effectiveness between narrowleaf plantain and broadleaf plantain. So that's something you may want to keep in mind and something you may want to experiment with. Usually I use both of these plants together anytime I'm using plantain. So I thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. If you want to learn more about edible or medicinal plants, make sure to subscribe.